Hi, my name is Samantha Payne, and I am going to walk through my unit of study that I designed for assignment 4 of AEP867, and the activity that I am going to be teaching with my unit is how to balance a checkbook. So let's get started. So the instructional design model that I chose was backward design. This is a model that I typically think that I am working with in my class purely because I'm teaching a lot of skills that can be shown and modeled very easily. And so my end goal was I want students to be successful in being able to balance and reconcile their checkbooks. The problem is the majority of my students do not have personal checking accounts that they could kind of draw experience off of. And so my solution that I created was to create a simulation of some sort to give students that experience. And why this model? And it's, again, like I said, a specific skill, and so I knew at the end I needed them to be able to balance a checkbook, and so I chose that skill, and then I just worked backwards from there to design my unit. So the unit details. My goal was to expose freshmen and business essentials to financial responsibility through balancing and reconciling a checkbook. And the ability to manage a bank account is not only one of my competencies that I'll talk about here in a minute, but it also is a life skill that doesn't always get taught at home, and I feel like as a business teacher that's one of my big responsibilities, is giving students personal finance skills that they can take into their life. So learner objectives, and I took these from my competencies, just kind of the things that they can gauge that is the student able to master this. Developing a personal budget, which is something we've been working into prior to this unit. Properly maintaining personal financial accounts, reading and reconciling bank statements, and then maintaining financial records. The competencies and ISTE standards that I was focusing on, my KSDE, my Business Essentials competency, defining the accounting equation and how accounting can assist in managing financial solvency. And again, going back, these 4 bullet points were some of the key skills or things, objectives that were able to prove that competency. I chose 2 ISTE standards, one for educators and one for students. The first one, designing authentic learning activities that align with content area and use digital tools and resources to maximize our learning. And then for students, being able to break problems into component parts, extract key information, and develop descriptive models. So really looking at the problem of what if their account doesn't balance, and how do you fix that? So the assessment, I'm going to have them complete 2 months of transactions with me, 1 month on their own in class so that I'm there to help guide them if they need it, and then an additional 6 months of the same thing, balancing, writing checks, deposit slips, those sorts of things, but with no help, and then also adding the ability to audit peers. And then we use this Knowledge Matters personal finance simulation in my class, and that's kind of the end thing, the last thing that they'll do to kind of put them in some more situations in balancing a checkbook. So analyzing their characteristics, and I've talked about this in previous discussion posts, it is my 7th hour class. We are on a 7-period day, so it's 2:05 on in any day. It's freshmen, 15 boys and 3 girls, which makes for a very interesting dynamic. Previous units show that they lack many personal finance skills. I have maybe 2 students that have jobs, and so just that earning money, having some of those personal finance skills is lacking. I did take a survey and show that only 2 students have personal checking accounts currently. Peers are very friendly. Everyone's friends with everyone's, and they're very easily distracted. And they struggle switching back and forth between iPad applications. So we are a 1-to-1 district with iPads, but I also have desktops in my room. And just managing all of the technology sometimes can be a lot for them. And after reading that article on multimedia cognitive overload, I truly feel like that's a very real thing with my 7th hour, that after spending all day on their iPads, their phones, computers, everything, by the time they get to my class, it's just brain overload. And so taking that into consideration as I design this lesson. So some student and teacher needs. Students will need the paper packet. I chose to go paper for the first 9 months of transactions, just for that writing. That's how many of us do our bank reconciliation still. I know there are applications and online banking makes that less and less every year, but still I like students to see on paper where the money goes before the bank does it for them. A pencil with an eraser, a calculator, desktop computer for the last piece, Microsoft Excel, and then Knowledge Matters personal finance simulation. And then I will need my Apple TV, my projector, my iPad, my computer, paper packets loaded into Notability on my iPad. I don't have an Elmo anymore, and so I will handwrite mine, but using Notability on my iPad, and then Excel for myself as well. So I'm just going to go through a couple of the examples of things that students are going to see in their check register. So this is the first one, that goes month by month, so just a general check register, and we go over each of the components, the sample of transactions that they'll receive, and this is about average for every month of transactions. What their account reconciliation will look like. It gives them their statement over here, and then the opportunity to reconcile down here. They'll have a set of blank checks and deposit slips to fill out throughout the process as well. Okay, so my activities, I actually made this a 4-day unit plan, and so I'm going to go over kind of what I did each day, or if it's in the future, doing each day. Form breakdown, going over each one of those things that I just briefly showed you, showing each part of the check, deposit slip, check register, account statement, reconciliation form. And then we'll do a work together, a WT for January and February. We'll read the transaction, write the check if needed, fill out the deposit slip if needed, record it in the check register, and then at the end of the month, so 2 times with me in class, they'll be going over how to reconcile their account and make sure that their ending balance in their check register matches what the bank has or matches the reconciliation. Day 2, I will ask them to do March on their own, but with me present, just so that I can manage questions as needed. And then actually switch some papers around, do some guided audits of students to make sure did they do it correctly. And then begin working on the assigned homework, which will be April through September on their own. Day 3, they should come in with September through September completed, and so we will do some checks for understanding there and make sure that they got on the right pace. Typically, I'll give the first few months ending balances of the checking account just so that they can check themselves and make sure they stay on track and they don't get so off 6 months later. But I actually want to bring in Excel and show them how to do their check register on the computer, since that is where we are moving as a society, so I want to make sure they're exposed to that. And complete October through December, handwriting the checks though and deposit slips still. And we'll integrate formulas with Excel. And then the last day, we will use the Knowledge Matters personal finance simulation, which they are familiar with up until this point. It's just a new lesson, which is balancing a checkbook. And so there's actually reading quizzes and math quizzes, and that's kind of how I'll gauge different knowledge points, but the ultimate skill is, can they balance their checkbook? And that's what I'm essentially assessing. So media and technology implemented. As I said, the multimedia cognitive overload of this class, I want to limit the technology here at the beginning of the unit and then bring it in later and at a limited pace. On day 3, they're going to move to Excel, and then day 4, they'll use their simulation. So after I did this unit, how did it go? Okay, so I completed it last week. We had a short week, so my plan was those 4 days will be perfect timing for this unit. I did unplanned, have to finish it up on Tuesday, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And 14 of the 18 students completed the work within the allotted time. Some students did need some extra assistance and extra time in completing the unit entirely, and completing their transactions on their own, essentially. So my evaluation of how I felt like the unit went. So on day 1, the form breakdown went well. The only form that many were familiar with was a check, and most said, well, my mom, has me bring a check for my student funds or for my lunch bill or whatever. So they've seen the check. They've never actually written one, with the exception of the 2 kids that have a checking account. For the work together, it was slow at first, slow going, just going transaction by transaction, but as time went on, we were able to pick up the pace a little bit, and students were able to manage flipping back and forth between their transactions to their checking accounts or to their blank checks or deposit slips a little bit quicker. So we were able to get through everything we needed to get through. On day 2, the March on Your Own, it went well. There was a few questions, but many did it. It took them about 10 minutes to get that done. The audit, though, was interesting because of the grumbles that happened when I put up, this is what you should have ended up with. And so that a few had those incorrect ending balances, so I paired them up accordingly. Those that maybe had the correct thing got paired up with the people that didn't, and then they were able to flip paper, so those that didn't do it correctly was able to see like, oh, that's what I should have done, and the person that did it correctly could kind of audit and say, oh, this is really interesting how you chose that number, or maybe, oh, you just transposed those two numbers, but it's not a big deal, you know, we've got pencils with erasers. On day 3, I didn't plan for students to not have used Excel before or Google Sheets or anything similar. That's my fault. I should have thought about that as I went through this. So it took up some class time to explain the basics of Excel before I was able to get in, you know, formulas, how to use them, that sort of thing, and their minds were blown. Like, where has it been all their lives? And I tell students all the time, Excel saves lives, and maybe they got a glimpse of the why. So we only actually ended up completing 1 month of data, which pushed everything back a little bit. But it was important to me that students saw Excel like that. Even though that wasn't part of my unit, it was still important to me that they have experience with that program. And so I took the time to give them that experience. So we completed the last 2 months of Excel data in class. That wasn't something I really wanted to be homework because the iPad's Excel is just a little different, and so I wanted them to use the desktop. And we started the reading and math quiz portion of the simulation, which pushed everything back, and so on Tuesday we finished up the simulation in class. And that one was a little bit difficult for students, the simulation, because it's a little touchy on how students put in decimal points, how students write things out. So that did take some class time, just because some students got a little bit off on a few things, just silly where to put the decimal point, adding a 0 here type thing. So that is my unit. I talked through that. I gave you the evaluation. I am going to be posting another video kind of reflecting on how I might change some things moving forward. I've kind of mentioned a few things already. So if you have any questions, just let me know. I hope that you enjoyed this and have a great day.